What's up, everybody? Ben Razza here for Odd Chopper, bringing you my favorite bet of the day to get things started. It's a new week, Monday, December 5th, in the sports world. Little Monday Night Football, just a little college basketball, of course, NBA, NHL. Bowl season not yet upon us, but soon enough on this very channel. Plenty of college football content. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, if you're just hopping in for the first time, this is what we do. All things betting, free content, breaking down games, having fun. If you enjoy that stuff, you want to support us, hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel. Join this community. Be part of the team. Last week, 3-2 in this video. Not bad. Clemson got us over the hump last time out. They destroyed North Carolina. Was happy to see that. Gives us a little momentum heading into a new week here. In addition, little more momentum. Say you don't use DraftKings Sportsbook. Say you've never signed up over there. Why not take $5 and turn it into $150?
You're not sharing audio. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back from the weekend into Monday, closing out week 13. I'm Dave Loughran. This is the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown strategy show. A little in-division rivalry, two sub-500 teams competing for the division. New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Bucks. Follow me at Laffy_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. While you're there, say hello to Matt Gajewski, Matt_Gajewski. We're running it back once again, as we do also. Dude, we're almost in week 14 already.
I know, man. It's insane. Like the college football streets, they just finished their conference championship. Same thing there. Every time a new week starts, I just can't believe how far we've gotten into the season. And seeing these two teams in the position they are is a little bit eye-opening. Normally, these are two teams, perennial playoff contenders we're talking about. So, you know, I open up the slate this morning, I'm like, oh, we got a pretty sick game on our hands. And then you look at the records of these teams, you're like, oh, maybe not. But hopefully it's a little better than the 41 total indicates. As always, I'm excited for it.
Me too. And I'll tell you straight up, I think this could be one of those games where double defense ends up being in the optimal. I really do. Especially if Marshon Lattimore plays. There's some trouble on both fronts here. You know, like Tristan Wirfs being out, I don't think can be overstated. I think that's a pretty big deal for Tampa Bay that's already struggled to protect Tom Brady. And then if you have Lattimore against Mike, listen, I know you and I try to not over complicate one-on-one matchups, but this is actually one of them I pay attention to because Marshon Lattimore over the years, not only has he shut Mike Evans down, but he has pissed him off to the point where you're talking, fist fights at midfield. You're talking ejections. It's happened more than once. And Marshon Lattimore, simply assuming he's active, has had Mike Evans' number. So if that matchup is active tonight, Tristan Wirfs already being out, you're talking right tackle for a guy. Tom Brady, clearly, when he's not protected as well as he has been in the past, is not the same quarterback. I think this could be a very low scoring, grinded out type affair. And if you look back on week 2 of this season, I think it was week 2, right? Between Tampa and New Orleans, this was a 3-3 game going into the fourth quarter before Jameis Winston, turned into Jameis Winston again and started getting picked off left and right.
Yeah, the NFL should just mandate that they put Jameis Winston back in the lineup because the Saints are very, very hard to watch without him. There's just nothing exciting that happens in their game. So wish they would just put him in. They won't because he loses games for them. But on the injury front, you're right. There's a lot of key stuff to watch here. I think Lattimore is going to play 3 straight limiteds. I also don't think this is the kind of game where he wants to miss either. Mike Evans, his rival, certainly on the other side, he wants to get the better of him again. And then you mentioned some of the Bucs injuries. The Wirfs one is huge. You also have a couple guys in the secondary hurt for this team. So I was kind of cautiously optimistic. Maybe some points would get put up on the board with some of the injuries in the Tampa Bay secondary as well. But we'll see, I guess. The Saints just haven't been able to do anything offensively.
I know. And look, I'm definitely not saying they can't put some points up on either side. But I do think there comes a point in the season, right, where you have to look at both of these teams because you and I have done so many of these shows together and we've done plenty of these teams on primetime games where it's like, hey, they have to turn it around at some point. But you get to a point, I mean, we're 3/4 of the way through the season. So you get to a point where you're like, this is kind of who these teams are at this point. This is who they are. Do you know that if the season ended today, the Eagles, Seahawks, and Lions would all have top 5 picks, and none of them would be their own picks. Like Eagles would have, if the Saints lose today, they stay in a bottom 5 spot. They don't even have that pick. It goes to the Eagles. The Broncos, who have been, I mean, what a pathetic display of football from that offense again, losing with 10 points. The defense, it should be a mutiny on board there in Denver. It's unbelievable that they could lose that game. The defense can't do any more than that. They gave it 10 points. And they don't even have their first round pick because they traded for Wilson, give him $250 million. And then how about the best part is that the Lions have the Rams pick and are currently sitting in a top 5 spot as they continue to win football games. You want to talk about a weird season? This has absolutely been one. And these two teams are no exception.
I mean, this is exactly how good teams stay good, bad teams stay bad. And we've talked about Philly for a while now, even since their last Super Bowl. You can look at what they've done with their roster, and I'll say it again, they continually take shots on high value positions. They repeatedly draft wide receiver. Rager doesn't work out, no sweat. We're not going to keep him on the field and just suffer from sunk cost dilemma. We're going to trade him for whatever we can for Minnesota. Okay, Carson Wentz doesn't work out, we're going to flip him. And they've done that repeatedly at high value positions, and now they find themselves excuse me, in a spot where they've made a lot of trades. They seemingly have quarterback figured out. They have studs at every position, and then they're in the top 6 again. So Philly, I mean, they're sitting pretty. Detroit seemingly making the right moves too, and they've slowly built up a war chest of assets. If they could get quarterback and their defense figured out a lot, that's a scary team in a really, really weak division. And then Seattle, the Denver trade, I didn't know who won it at the time just because the compensation was massive. So it's like, you think you get Russell Wilson and this is some sort of home run for them because you need to figure out quarterback more than anything else in the NFL. But then the trade plays out. Seattle now has a war chest of assets. They seemingly have the better quarterback. I don't know, man. That trade is egregious.
It's horrible. And hey, credit to the Lions. They're pretty fun right now. Like this team, they've won 4 of their last 5. The only game they lost over that stretch was a walk-off field goal to the Bills on Thanksgiving Day in a game the Bills absolutely needed to win. I mean, the Lions, I don't think either of us are crowning this team, but they're a football team now. Like they're actually a team that you can't just walk in and walk over every single week and kind of just ignore it on the schedule. So the landscape of the NFL is beginning to change. You saw Joe. Isn't it amazing too, just as we do a little recap here before we jump into this game, Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they got Patrick Mahomes' number right now. That's the first game in 27 games that Mahomes has lost in November or December.
I didn't know that stat. That's incredible. Incredible. And yeah, when Cincinnati is at full health, man, that team is scary. Same with the Chiefs. There were a couple of really weird plays in that game, like Kelsey fumbling and stuff, but ultimately, when you play the Bengals, when you play the Chiefs and these teams face off against each other, these are razor thin margins. So when you have a play like that, it could ultimately decide the game. So now I know Mahomes is 0-3. I think he lost by the same score twice in these games against Cincinnati, but I hope they meet again, man. Those games are just super exciting.
How sick would an AFC championship game be between them again? Back-to-back AFC championship games?
Oh, it'd be perfect.
Who would you like to see in the NFC championship, just as far as like quality of game?
Chicago versus Philly. So we can finally get the answer on Justin Fields versus Jalen Hurts. I'm going to hold that torch for AB here. No, I'm just kidding.
I had a feeling that was coming. Yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know. If you had to pick a Super Bowl matchup right now, who is it? Like, do you have the Bengals in there? Do you have the Bills in there? Who's it going to be?
I would like to see Philly and Buffalo.
That'd be awesome.
You asked about the NFC Championship. I want to ask that to you. Who would you want to see Philly play? I don't even feel confident one way. Like Dallas?
Okay. As an Eagles fan, I'd love to see Minnesota.
The game would be electric.
It would be electric. It's just Minnesota is one of those teams that finds ways, in big spots to fall apart. I'd rather face them than Dallas. I'll tell you that much. I'm not sure who else in the NFC is that scary.
So I would tell you who I would have liked it to be until yesterday, San Francisco.
Yeah, I would not want to face San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo. Although, how about them coming in with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft, and beating up. I mean, that defense is just a juggernaut too, right? Like that defense is fantastic. And now, even without Garoppolo, at least you have Christian McCaffrey to act as a safety valve. They're a team that I would love to avoid. As an Eagles fan, I would love to avoid them. Look, the Minnesota Vikings are a good team. They're a good team, but I think like 9 of their 10 wins have been one possession wins. That every game they play is very close, and that's great. You learn to manage adversity and win through adversity. But how long can you continue to win one possession games? Like Mike White twice had them in a position to win that game. Credit to Minnesota. They got stops. They got one stop at the goal line, and then they stopped them again once they punted it back to them around the 45. But yeah, I think Minnesota is a good team. I don't think they're a great team, but I think San Francisco, Matt, is one of those teams that even with Brock Purdy, they're still a pretty scary football team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing we can say about Purdy is this Kyle Shanahan offense. It's more of an execution offense. It's not like your quarterback needs to be the creator on the field. And we've seen this with multiple quarterbacks through Kyle Shanahan throughout the years. And I think we could even say that a little bit with Garoppolo. He's not really an elevator of talent around him. We see Garoppolo produce when they have fully healthy Kittle and Debo and Ayuk and now McCaffrey. So hopefully Purdy can just play well enough. And the last thing I'll say on the NFC is there's a very real chance we get like a Tampa Bay or some team making a late surge because it's so wide open outside of Philly. So if you saw like a Tampa Bay make it to an NFC championship, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. And I think I haven't looked at any futures right now, but it might be a decent place to look at a long shot in the NFC, because if one of these teams with a good roster that's been hurt or something backdoors their way in, you could see an NFC championship against Philly just because it's so weak in this conference.
That's a great point. Like you could right now see every team in the NFC East make the playoffs. And I think to your point, if you go up and you're facing the Giants in the wild card round, or, because mind you, like you're saying, if let's say it's the Bucs, let's say they do find a way to piece it together. We're going to talk about them right now. If they do find a way to piece things together, and then you get a home matchup because you're the division winner, even if you get in at it's real. It's possible that they get in at 8-9 right now, that they win their division at 8-9. And then you go and you get a home matchup against the Giants, or the Commanders, two teams that tied each other yesterday. The Commanders have played well, but they're not exactly a team you're shaking in your boots about. You're right. That might be a relatively easy path into the divisional round, and then any given Saturday or Sunday. So I think that's a good point, man. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. They got to put it together, man. But you're right. That division, what the heck?
It's so bad.
They're under 500 and they lead it.
They're 5-6. Falcons are 5-8. Of course, Bucs play tonight, so they could move to 6-6 or 5-7. It's insane. Panthers 4-8, Saints 4-8. Yeah, you could realistically see a team get in at sub 500, winning their division, not as a wild card, but winning their division as a sub 500 team. You ready to talk a little bit about Monday Night Football?
Yeah, let's do it. Big game. This one has a lot of division implications on the line, as we noted. Winner might be putting themselves in a position to win the division.
Yeah, Tampa Bay wins, they can get to 500. That's exciting. But no, to your point, like Saints could win. Saints could win this game, move to 5-8. It would move the Bucs to 5-7. And then the Saints are in striking distance of winning the division. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So yeah, let's talk about it. Happy to have you guys with us as always. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you're listening after the fact. Let us know what you think of this game. Let us know what you think of the league in general. I try and read and try and respond to a lot of these comments if you're doing so after the fact. And hey, if you're listening in podcast form, leave a rating, a review, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff helps us a lot, and we appreciate you guys for it. All right, so Matt, let's kick it off with the New Orleans Saints here. On the road. And by the way, I grabbed the Saints at +4 earlier in the week. I think this is one of those spots that Tom Brady has struggled against mightily. I'm assuming Marshawn Lattimore, as you mentioned, is active. I think you can see a very low scoring game. Not saying we get a Saints win here, but on offense for the Saints, it's been ugly. No Juwan Johnson today. You might be like, oh, that doesn't matter. Well, he leads the team in touchdowns this year. Alvin Kamara has scored. I tweeted this earlier. He has scored touchdowns in 1 of 10 games this season. 1 of 10 games, Alvin Kamara has found the end zone. Granted, he scored 3 times in that game. I'm sure you remember it was that blow up performance. But aside from that, 1 out of 10 games, Alvin Kamara has found the end zone. And Dennis Allen just continues to stick with Andy Dalton here. Regardless of what happens with this team, despite getting blanked last week against San Francisco, it hasn't mattered. What are we going to do with Andy Dalton just to start this one off?
I think he's going to come in a bit contrarian here. He's one of those quarterbacks that hasn't really shown anything. He doesn't really elevate the talent around him. So he's kind of dependent on the playmakers doing something for him. So immediately that kind of raises my attention. He's also not expensive today. So if you want to get a player that touches the ball every single play, it's pretty easy to do so. The thing with Dalton, he doesn't run though. So, I mean, could you target a pass catcher instead and just hope that most of this production is funneled to 1 or 2 of the pass catchers? And recently we've actually seen a lot of it funneled to Olave. So I don't really necessarily know that we should have Dalton inside a lot of optimal lineups, everything like that. So he's probably the hardest player on the entire slate for me to evaluate so far. I know we're talking about him first, but a lot of dynamics here. They did a great job with his pricing. You know, he's not 10K on DraftKings. So the 9K price tag, which is just below like Mike Evans and some other players, really makes you think, you know, you got to price these bad quarterbacks down to at least make them somewhat enticing. So that's kind of where I'm at with Dalton. I think I'm going to be a little light, but I'm not 100% sure.
Agreed. Again, I could honestly see this being a game where, you know, 2 defenses and a kicker is in the optimal. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And it's funny because there's good players on this slate. These 2 offenses just haven't been able to produce. By the way, welcome Freshka to Team Stokastic. Badge looks good on you. You can join down below. You'll see that join button if you want to jump in, join the family here on YouTube. Alvin Kamara, though, really interesting because you have him at a, I mean, it's not a crazy price. Nobody's insanely priced on this slate. So you're not paying $18,000 in the captain spot for Kamara, which is at least, you know, interesting. And plus he's still very good. I don't want to take away from the fact that he hasn't scored. He's still, you know, fantastic, but Mark Ingram returned to the mix last week in week 12 was a non-factor, but Alvin Kamara at the same time was also a non-factor against a great San Francisco defense. It's just amazing that, you know, they have struggled so much to move the football. And unfortunately, a byproduct of that has been Alvin Kamara failing to get anything going. He's still getting opportunities in the passing game. He's still going to have some big performances, but we haven't seen that lately. And a lot of these spots, you know, they've fallen behind. Even when they haven't fallen behind, he's been, you know, modestly involved in on the ground. I'm just curious not what you think of Alvin Kamara, but on a 1-game showdown slate at this price, which is cheap relative to most times Alvin Kamara is on a showdown slate, do we just have to play? And by the way, our top plays tool is updated, Matt. So Alex just gave me that word. 14% top play probability. We have him with some negative leverage though. I mean, significant negative leverage here, only 7% optimal in the captain spot.
If I had to guess on the negative leverage, I would think it's just Mark Ingram coming back and siphoning off some snaps, even if it doesn't, you know, put Mark Ingram in optimal lineups or give Mark Ingram a lot of work. It still takes away from Kamara. Like last week, for example, Kamara 38 snaps, Ingram 17. That was out of 57. When Ingram's not in there, Kamara is a lot closer to that 100% mark. So that it is impactful just with Ingram sort of cannibalizing the role that we usually see Alvin Kamara with. But you brought up one thing that still makes me want to play Kamara. It's the pass catching role. He's still been significantly involved there. And you look at his targets, he's had at least 4 targets in every single game this year. And he's been above that plenty. Last game, 7 targets, 6 receptions. So whether it's Dalton or Jameis, the pass game role is still there for Kamara. I ran some optimals this morning. He's in about 30% of them. I think that's mainly just price, and we have some really good studs on Tampa Bay. So I think my initial inkling is just going to play Kamara. I think we're getting him in a strong buy low spot. I personally think this is one of the most talented players in the NFL, and a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball defense wise. So I'm going to try to take a shot on Kamara. Very surprising to see his optimal captain so low, though. I will say that.
It is. And look, I love Alvin Kamara too, just as a player. I mean, it's shocking to me that they're not trying to find ways to just get him involved as much as possible every single week. You would really think that a guy as explosive and dynamic as he is, someone that can change the game with just a couple of plays, isn't seeing more opportunities to make those plays. Like, yeah, you're going to have some carries or some rushes for losses. You're going to have some negative receiving plays. You're going to have some ugly spots because this is not a good offense right now. But when you have someone like that, Matt, and this is what kind of surprises me, when you have someone like Alvin Kamara who can do what he did several weeks ago against Las Vegas and just completely blow the game wide open against the Raiders, why are we not seeing more of that? Like, why are we not seeing them say, all right, yeah, maybe teams are keying in on him. Find ways to get him more involved. I think it's inexcusable that you're seeing such low touch counts for him. Last week, 14 total looks. Yeah, they lost 13-0, but it was a low scoring game. It's not like they were out of it. And plus, who else other than Chris Olave would you rather be trying to get the ball to in space in games like this? The game before that, 2 games before that against Pittsburgh, they lost 20-10 in Pittsburgh, and he had 12 total looks. They lost to Baltimore 27-13, and he had 9 carries and 4 targets. Why is he not seeing, ample opportunities in both phases of the game? And if you get scripted out of the run game, why are we seeing 4 targets in these games?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. And at some point, Dennis Allen's going to have to answer a lot of questions because, one, he's essentially trotting out the same inept quarterback every single week. And you have an alternative in Jameis Winston. You have arguably top 5 running back in the league, underutilizing him, mixing in guys like Taysom Hill and Mark Ingram, which makes very little sense outside of, like goal line packages for Hill and the Wildcat, which Kamara should still be on the field in those. So to your point, makes very little sense. And every week we expect this to change, at least I do personally, based on the talent profile of Kamara, and it just hasn't. So the tools, they make sense. They're surprising seeing Alvin Kamara this low given his previous body of work, but I have no qualms with where he's at in our tools. This is a personal stand by me to try to bet on a very talented player, but it's not like I'm going to be going crazy and locking Kamara in 100%, using him way over the field in captain. I just want to make sure I have a little over the field on who I believe is the most talented player on this offense for DFS purposes. And it's not going to be crazy. It's just going to be slightly over the field.
And by the way, I'm with you. That wasn't me trying to make an argument against it. It's just shocking to me that you're not seeing more opportunities. And I know he fumbled twice last week. I know there was the goal line fumble, but still, are there really better options in that offense? And I think the answer is a resounding no. But we'll see. Ryan asked, Laffy, could this be a slate where we could possibly fade both quarterbacks? Appreciate it. Go Niners. Yeah, it's an impressive win from the Niners yesterday. I would not be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, look, it's one game. So, if Brady ends up throwing 2 touchdowns, then you're probably going to want him if he has a decent performance. But no, I wouldn't be terribly shocked if this was a 13-10 game. Honestly, wouldn't. Last time these teams faced each other, go back and look. I'm pretty sure, and Matt, I could be mistaken here. I'm pretty certain that this was mostly a defensive performance from the Saints, from the Bucs that got them over the top. Looking at it now, yeah, Brady threw for 190 and a touchdown. He had 10 fantasy points. Brady has struggled. Again, we'll talk about that once we get to the Bucs, but he has really struggled against this New Orleans defense. And the Bucs defense definitely looks better than they have in recent games, despite that overtime loss last time out. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me at all. What are you doing with and we'll get to that more once we get into Tampa, but what are you doing with the pass catchers here? No Juwan Johnson. So you're talking Olave, you're talking, Jarvis Landry. and a few other just peripheral guys, not to mention that, as you pointed out earlier in the show, you do have some banged up players in the secondary for Tampa. We kind of have all season.
Yeah, their secondary is kind of ravaged right now. We'll see who's up and who's down, but they're going to be down multiple starters. We can say that pretty confidently. So looking at the ancillary pass catchers here, it's kind of been disgusting outside of Olave. He has a locked-in target share, locked-in route share, and he's clearly the alpha. And he has maybe one of the most absurd like air yards workloads in the league. They'll use him downfield. Would love that more if, Jameis was under center, but he has fantastic big playability too. So at a close price point between him and Dalton, right now, I think I just lean Olave straight up. It's close though, because, Dalton touches the ball every single play, but man, it's hard to really ignore Olave at his price tag, 8,400. It's very cheap for what seems to be the alpha receiver on your team. Jarvis Landry, he's been banged up all season, seemingly is the wide receiver too, but I don't really feel that confident in that. You look at snaps and routes, Jarvis Landry, he's solid, but is he that far ahead of these ancillary guys? Is he that far ahead of Rashid Shaheed? Is he that far ahead of, they played Kevin White for 18 snaps last week.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Landry played 32 snaps. White played 18. Shaheed played 30 snaps.
Yeah. So the price difference between these guys, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense, but this is a very volatile situation behind these guys. You've got Landry at 52, which I guess just de facto, he's the number 2 receiver, you have to say. But you go down the list and you look at some of the ancillary pass catchers behind him. Would I rather play Rashid Shaheed at 1.4K, who ran 2 fewer routes, or played 2 fewer snaps, 1 fewer route? I think I'm probably just going down and playing Rashid Shaheed at 1.4K.
I think you're right. It feels like, and look, I'm not saying Landry's price point is insane. It's not like he's $8,000, but yeah, you're talking about a player who's just from an overall distribution of targets standpoint here. It's not like he's what you're saying is accurate. Like, it's not like he's the clear number 2 in the sense of, a number 1 and then a number 2 that is getting, the 6, 7, 8 targets every single game. That just hasn't been the case for Jarvis Landry this year. It's kind of ugly because we haven't even factored in, Taysom Hill's role into this yet, and we'll talk about him. But before that, no Juwan Johnson. He leads the team with 5 touchdowns this year. Adam Trautman is cheap, but he's not exciting at all. I mean, when it comes to Trautman, you're hoping for 2 for 20 and a touchdown, basically.
Yeah. And can I sum up the receivers quick?
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So they didn't have Callaway last week. So this is the one wrinkle I want to talk about before we move to tight end. Callaway projected to return tentatively, so that could throw a wrench into the mix. But if you go back even an additional week, you still see Rashid Shaheed playing more snaps than Callaway. So to rank these guys just top 4 where I think their roles are, I think it's number 1, Olave, goes without saying. Number 2, Jarvis, not by much. Number 3 is Shaheed for me. And then I think Callaway is 4. In their second most recent game, you had Shaheed at 28 snaps, Callaway at 21. And then from there, once you get to the Traquan Smiths, the Kevin Whites, these are like your very, very large field Millie Maker style dart throws. I'm like, okay, Kevin White's on the field for 3 snaps, let's say. Could he catch a bomb? Sure. Do I want to play him anywhere near cash? Absolutely not. So that's how I would rank them. You're going to have a tough choice, I think, between Callaway and Shaheed. Callaway's 800. Again, I prefer Shaheed just finding the extra 600 in salary, but these are kind of your 2 really cheap guys that make stud lineups work.
And you do expect Callaway to play this week because he was a coach's decision inactive last week.
He's in our projections right now. This is just something, watch live before lock. It's amazing to me that he was inactive over Kevin White. So personally, I think he should be active over Kevin White, but we'll find that information out luckily live before lock. So make sure you catch that stream.
No doubt. There really isn't a clear option behind Chris Olave though.
No, not at all.
How much do you like Olave though? Obviously we like that he's the number 1 in this offense. He is by far the superior receiver to anybody else in this. It's not close. It's not even up for discussion. At his price point, I honestly think even at 8,400, that's a pretty reasonable price point on Olave, because I'm on the record saying I expect, and the line on this game is 40.5, 41 points. Sorry, the total. So it's not like I'm saying anything crazy here. If this is projected to be a low scoring game, a 15-point performance from Chris Olave at 8,400 could be more than enough at that price. So I don't think you're going to need a nuclear game from him in order to pay off that price point this week anyway, or tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's my favorite. And then, kind of like the New England Patriots, we've talked about them on Showdown. Sometimes it's just, okay, these guys all rotate. Just give me the cheapest guy. And right now, the cheapest guy with a consistent role is Shaheed. So I just by default, I think I'm going to be having more Shaheed in my lineups compared to Jarvis Landry and the ancillary pass catchers around him.
Any other pass catchers you want to talk about?
Yeah, tight end. You brought up a really interesting point. What do you think they do with Taysom? Because Taysom hasn't played more than 8 snaps at the tight end position in any game this year.
I don't know, because he's still the wrinkle here is that he's still going to get what, 6 carries or so, probably. He's seen 15 carries over the last 2 games. He hasn't really, they haven't materialized into anything, but we always at least have to talk about him, because once in a while you get those big games from Taysom Hill that are going to throw everything, they're going to throw everything off its axis. But as far as tight end goes, I don't really know. My assumption is that doesn't change a whole lot, because they've had tight end injuries at times this season, like Troutman's missed games. Do you think with Juwan Johnson, who has been the tight end 1 here and has been their primary pass catching tight end, which is, definitely relevant, that Taysom Hill is used in that capacity tonight? Because if that's the case, then things get really interesting.
I think we see a slight uptick for Taysom Hill. And the funny thing is, when you look at his snaps, it's not like he's just cannibalizing Kamara or cannibalizing the tight end or even just Andy Dalton. He plays snaps at every position every single week. He cannibalizes a little bit of everything. Last week, for reference, 6 snaps out wide, 5 in the slot, 8 in line, 9 at quarterback. Taysom Hill is used everywhere. And to your point, they've missed tight ends throughout the year already. It hasn't drastically changed Taysom Hill's role. He's still playing all over the field. So I think Troutman is pretty interesting at 1.2K. I imagine a lot of people are going to play Shaheed tonight. And this is kind of just a betting on let's fade the field and assume the field doesn't always know what they're talking about. And sometimes we get this stuff wrong. If Troutman is significantly under-owned compared to Shaheed, I think that's a leverage point I want to target.
I think so too. Obviously, it's, they're low probability plays here, but Shaheed has had a couple of opportunities this season where he's, ripped off some long plays. So that's interesting to me, right? Like he has 3 receptions of 30+ yards. That's nice, just knowing that, maybe, because remember that opening drive against Arizona earlier this year, back in week 7, where Shaheed had 1 catch all game. It was a 53-yard touchdown on the opening drive. Look, again, insanely low probability play here. He has a 44-yard rush as well. But I do think, just given the lack of, good dirt cheap options, how far separated do we have their ownership right now? Because you're not captaining these guys. What does utility ownership look like on them?
It's pretty close right now. Shaheed utility ownership is at 12%, 12.3 to be exact. And then let's see.
7 on Troutman.
Yeah, 7 on Troutman.
I'd probably still lean Shaheed a little bit there.
Same.
Anything else we want to talk about the Bucs here? It gets even more interesting once we get to this Tampa Bay team.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Hey, before we do, shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. We're still running it. The same thing we've been doing. If you guys, for some reason, are dragging your feet and Prize Picks is available in your state, especially non-legal betting states, scratch that itch with Prize Picks. That should be their, they should pay me for that. 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. All of our tools for football, baseball. Well, baseball's not here right now, but when it is, basketball, NFL, MMA, PGA, every sport, World Cup right now, college basketball, any sport that's out there with these contests, we got you covered. all of our tools, all of them built by Osimo himself, and just an incredible incredible team behind the scenes working on these every day. All of these guys, professional DFS players that make sure we have the best tools out there. You're getting a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. It's $120 value. We just added the lineup generator in there. You can export the lineups, generate the CSV, do a whole lot more with that. Check out all of our data, all of our tools, all the articles, everything we've got, all of that when you use the link for Prize Picks in the description or the one that Mike can throw in the chat. Also, it's actually a very cool site. It's blowing up too. All you're doing is taking props. You're building lineups, right? They might be considered like parlays on a traditional book, but in this case, you could build, up to 5, I think even 6 now player lineups, taking props over, under, no juice on either side. There's some great spots to exploit. You can mix sports up as well. If you wanted to do football and college basketball in the same lineup, you can do that, right? If you're Matt Gajewski and you have your hands in fingers in many pies, you could play it all on the same one. If you hit all of them, you're 10Xing on 5. But unlike a traditional parlay, you hit 4 of 5, you still 2X. You still make money back on 3 of 5. So awesome opportunity to build a bankroll, make money, have some shots at big money over there, and get a free month to Stokastic Plus Platinum. And if I forgot to mention, which I did, when you sign up using our link, you're also getting up to $100 first match deposit bonus. So essentially free money, free month subscription. Jump into our Discord, join the family, and start winning some money over there on Prize Picks, prizepicks.com. Check it out. And then after you sign up, download the app. Very nice app, smooth app over there at Prize Picks. Got to use the link in the description or in chat though. All right, Tampa Bay. We'll start with Tom Brady. Not exactly a great season from him this year, Matt. How many games do you think he has with 20 plus fantasy points in 12 starts? Sorry, 11 starts.
2.
Close. Yeah, 3. But still, this is coming into the season. You're assuming that with Fournette, with Godwin, with Mike Evans, with Julio Jones even serving as a wide receiver 3 or 4 next to Russell Gage, that you'd be getting some really solid games from Tom Brady. He has 0-30 fantasy point performances. Granted, you shouldn't need that on a slate like tonight. It's highly unlikely that you will, but it's been a rough go for him. I am wondering where you're at on this Tristan Wirfs injury. I know you're not going to be like, oh, well, you can't play Tom Brady, obviously, but just given the offensive line struggles that we've seen at times this year, to me, it seems significant at least and worth talking about that he's sidelined.
Yeah, Tristan Wirfs is a wagon. That dude is awesome. He might be one of the best tackles in football when it's all said and done in his career. He's very young, very athletic, one of the most athletic players in the NFL. If you haven't seen his combine and you just want something to entertain yourself this morning, go look it up. Dude is a freak.
Did you see the video of him jumping out of the pool? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've seen it all. Guy is a pure wagon. The Iowa strength and conditioning coach, man, continues to put out these guys. Him and the Penn State guy. I don't know what they're being paid, but it's not enough. Anyway, to Wirfs. Yeah, these are 2 good defenses. So anytime you have a departure like this, especially one of your blindside blockers, it's going to be impactful. So hopefully they can find a way to mask this. I don't know if it's, like using Fournette in pass protection. He's been pretty good there. Just having, maybe the running back in a block more, put your tight end to give a little help to the tackle on that side more often than you do at other points. But it's certainly a downgrade for the offense. Hoping Brady, just being the veteran he is, can sort of mask some of this at various points, get the ball out fast. He's been able to do so in the past. It's been a little more of a struggle this year, but I think we've seen some positive signs to Brady lately. If you look at like the last 5 games, he's been above at least 245 in all 5. He has multiple touchdowns in each of the last 2. And the thing I'll go to more than anything else, he's at least had 40 passing attempts in 5 of the last 6 games. The only game he was below that was against Seattle. So the volume is still there. Hopefully, with all these pass catchers getting healthier, we can continue to see high volume performances and at least a usable floor from Brady. He's given us more of the floor lately than the ceiling, but I'm fine with that if I'm going to use him in the flex spot today. So I'll be looking at Brady there more than anywhere else, I think.
Yeah, I like him in the flex as well. I just think at this point, I think you'd agree too. It's more likely that you have a captain worthy game from one of the skill players in Tampa Bay than it is from Tom Brady.
I agree with that 100%, especially because Tom Brady doesn't run. He's never been a runner.
Nope.
So this, especially on DraftKings, where the scoring in the PPR format, it's easier for a receiver to outscore a quarterback. Just 6-point touchdown compared to 4-point touchdown. The PPR bonus, quarterback doesn't get that. So we could very well see that. And these are awesome receivers. So I want to play these receivers in a vacuum to begin with. But now we can maybe get some leverage in the captain. That's what I would like to do. And that's what our tools are showing right now. Brady, you're getting positive leverage mainly in the utility spot, which is perfect for me because it just backs up my priors heading into the game.
Stephen Leibowitz, what's up, Stephen? Mentioned in chat that Tom Brady's rushing prop on Prize Picks today is minus 0.5.
That's funny in the NFL.
It is. He has a -6 rushing yards on the season.
The only thing that makes you scary is they will not hesitate to sneak him.
Right. I know. If they're up, you're probably going to have zero. If there's no sneak attempts, you're probably going to have 0 rushing yards heading into the final drive. And then if you get the kneel downs, I mean, that'll be a real sweat. That'll be a real sweat. If you're coming into the, Brady up with the final drive, do you get the kneel down attempts? I don't know. That's probably one I'd stay away from. But by the way, you mentioned the 40+ pass attempts. In 8 of his last 9, I think, 40+ pass attempts, which is pretty crazy.
42, that's a lot of volume.
42, 52, 52, 40, 49, 44, 58, 29, 43, which is insane that he's had such underwhelming fantasy totals for a guy that is throwing that. I mean, he threw 58 times against the Rams and had 15 fantasy points. I don't even know how that's possible, but it is.
I didn't know that. That is egregious.
Yeah, dude, it was like Joe Flacco week 1 of the season against, what was it, Baltimore? But I agree. I'm with you. I like Brady in the flex. I think he's perfectly reasonable there. He has really had some tough games against this New Orleans Saints team. I'm just super curious to see if Marshawn Lattimore is going to be active. I think that throws an even bigger wrinkle into the mix because you have Mike Evans and then you have Chris Godwin. I like Chris Godwin over Evans regardless. I think, higher floor, similar ceiling on Godwin. Ownership obviously plays a role here, but right now you have what? Evans at 11% at captain, Godwin at 13%. Both of them have, similar optimal captain probability. They're almost identical utility ownership. Mike Evans has slightly higher leverage score, but go if you guys think I'm just overreacting to this, go look at Mike Evans matchups in the 11 times that he's faced Marshawn Lattimore and get back to me. It's atrocious. I mean, you've had 0 reception games. You had 1 reception for 2 yards in a touchdown game. You've had some really ugly spots from him. I would just err on the side of caution and go with Chris Godwin because it's not like Chris Godwin is the safer play with a lower ceiling. He can do everything that Evans does. He just does it in a different fashion, more with volume, more with targets, but also is a great yards after the catch guy. So both of them in play for me, Matt. We're still waiting on Lattimore's status, but as it stands right now, assuming Lattimore's active, I do like Chris Godwin more given the similarities in numbers in our top plays tool.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I think you could play these guys together if you wanted. That might give you leverage because they're both expensive. So you're foregoing someone else that's also expensive if you do that. In a 1-for-1 situation, like if I was building a cash lineup, I would prefer Godwin. And our tools, they say, well, it's called leverage score for a reason. Mike Evans probably not going to be played as much, projects a little bit lower. He's the leverage play if you want to just pick one of the two for maybe a large field tournament style situation. But nothing else to add. I love Godwin. I think he's the better play in a vacuum.
Oh, dude, this receiving core outside of Evans and Godwin, the whole team starts to get interesting because it looks like Russell Gage should be active. Julio Jones is going to play. We can talk about running backs as well, but it looks like Leonard Fournette's going to play. It looks like Cameron Brate has a good chance of suiting up in this one. So at least recently we've had enough absences from Tampa Bay to where we can kind of pick and choose our spots. This offense, as far as skill players go, looks like it's probably going to be healthy today. And that really throws a wrench into the works.
I think Julio Jones would still be ahead of Gage as the wide receiver 3. The question is how much would Gage come in and siphon away from him? Or is Gage mainly cannibalizing Rashad Perriman, Scotty Miller when he gets on the field? And I tend to think it's the latter, but I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, look, Julio played a season high 62% of snaps last week. That is at least interesting, right? He's never going to get close to the near 100% of snaps that Godwin's playing, the 80 to 90% that Mike Evans is playing. But Julio's seeing a significant uptick in snaps as the season moves on. And I know they were coming off a bye as well. To me, it is kind of significant there. So maybe you're right. Maybe Scotty Miller and Rashad Perriman just don't really see the field. Julio goes back to 50% of snaps and Russell Gage is playing, 30-40% of snaps in this game. That wouldn't be shocking.
We do have Russell Gage projected ahead of Julio right now, but I think this is very volatile. Like both these guys have been hurt for most of the year. We haven't seen a lot of games where Russell Gage and Julio are on the field together. So this is plenty of guesswork here. I tend to side with Julio as just the healthier player at this point. He's actually played in games. Russell Gage coming off the injury, and Julio Jones just being the player he is, higher caliber player than Gage, in my opinion. But also, Gage is a bit cheaper. So you could look at it that way too. It's very close between the two. And ultimately, I don't think either are going to be played a ton. I don't think either are going to have great projections just because they'll cannibalize each other to some degree. But for large field tournaments, I think they're interesting kind of in this price range. They're similar to like Jarvis Landry to me, where I would rather go down and maybe play a punt option than get to one of these guys, but I don't think they're going to be very owned.
Me neither. I do prefer Jones a little bit over Gage. The pricing is similar. Gage is marginally more popular, but not something that's really going to change my mind on anything. I don't want either of these guys a captain, of course, but I do find that at least remotely intriguing that Julio Jones has been a guy that they're trying at times to use in different ways in this offense, like the end arounds and stuff out of the backfield at times. That tells me that they still want to get him involved. And you're talking about a guy that's seen 4 targets, and then that 15-yard rush on a high passing volume offense. If Lattimore plays and Mike Evans is having a tough time and Brady just doesn't go towards him, which we've seen in this matchup before, I think Jones could benefit. But once you get past Jones and Gage, assuming both of them are active, I have a tough time having any interest in like the Rashad Perrimans and the Scotty Millers, even though they're very cheap, like even though they're close to the bottom. Do you want to take some stabs there? Just saying, hey, these guys are, close to, if not already at the min in a Rashad Perriman, or are you just fading these real clear bottom of the line receivers for Tampa?
I would fade them unless you're playing the Millie Maker.
Okay.
We have players that are viable at similar price points. You can play Troutman, you can play Shaheed. Those guys have locked in route shares to some degree. It's not 100%, but they're going to be on the field. They'll see a few targets. Rashad Perriman and Scotty Miller legitimately might play 0 snaps. So from a safety perspective, I certainly prefer the Saints value plays to the Tampa Bay ones, but Millie Maker, you can make the argument for anything. So I think Neil Orfield's on tonight. You'll probably hear him talk about these guys. He's the large field GPP expert. I'm more in the small field waters. So for me, I will not have any Perriman, anything like that, unless there's some change throughout the day.
That's how I see it too. Just looking, it's really tough though, looking at what we've seen all season long and trying to figure out how many snaps guys like Perriman and Miller play, because at some point we haven't seen a full game with Julio, Gage, Godwin, and Evans together. We haven't seen a full game all season with all of them on the field. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, but I would lean towards what you're saying in that if Gage is good to go and Julio, obviously he's good to go, Evans and Godwin are going to play 90+% of snaps each probably in a competitive game. And then you've got Julio, who's probably going to play at least 50% of snaps. Gage. Yeah. I'll steer clear of Perriman and Scotty Miller here, especially in small field tournaments. What about at tight end where Cade Otton had been the guy? Cameron Brake returned a couple of weeks ago, and they're basically just splitting snaps now.
Yeah, worst case scenario for DFS, really, because now if you play them, you're kind of just gambling on who potentially scores a touchdown here. Brate's played that role a lot in his career. He was slightly ahead of Otton in terms of routes last week. We know Otton's more of a two-way tight end, so that kind of makes sense. With Cameron Brate, you're essentially looking at an undersized move tight end. Cade Otton is actually two-way. You could play either one. Then you've got Ko Keith, who's like a sixth offensive lineman out there. And this team uses 12 personnel a fair amount. It's not near like the top of the league or anything, but last week, 36 snaps for Keith, for Otton, 35 for Brate, 16 for Keith. They only ran 69 snaps. You can clearly see there is some 12 personnel usage in there. So that's going to siphon off some work from some of the receivers. None of them are particularly involved in the offense. So it's kind of a situation, just like we talked about with the value receivers. Would I rather play a Cameron Brate at 3K, or would I rather just save the salary, go down and take a shot on Shaheed? And it's probably the latter at this point. These are GPV plays, in my opinion.
Here's a fun question for you. Would you, and I have an answer for this. Would you rather have Julio or would you rather have Jarvis Landry?
Julio.
Me too. I would too. Yeah, it's not fun, but I think I'd rather have Julio Jones in this game.
They're gonna throw the ball so much more.
I know. And at least he's targeted deep downfield, right? Like in a showdown slate, if you get one deep ball that he hauls in, and yeah, I would prefer Julio. This isn't to say I don't think it's a ringing endorsement from either of us on Julio, but at basically the same price, yeah, I'd rather have Julio over Jarvis Landry. I would. And Jarvis Landry's definitely pulling more ownership than Julio in this spot, like double the ownership. All right, running backs. Let's assume Leonard Fournette plays. You want to talk about another mess here. Is this Rachaad White's backfield now, or do we just see an ugly split where we have to figure out which one of these guys is going to get the majority of work?
I'm thinking Fournette plays 3 straight full practices, and I think it is fully a split here. And I think there's also some reading into the tea leaves. Maybe Fournette plays slightly more than his counterpart just because he's a veteran. They have a left tackle who's out of this game. And you're talking about Rachaad White as a rookie. Do they really want him out there pass blocking? That's something Fournette's done very well in his career, and it's kept him on the field on third downs a lot. So I think this is probably close to a 50-50 split, and we have both backs priced above 7K. It's like the worst possible situation. Neither are going to project particularly well, but if you want to split the difference, I think Rachaad White's a slightly better pass catcher, and he's cheaper. In a vacuum, I would prefer White, but I imagine I will be under the field on both.
This is the spot that just drives me nuts. I would go White too. I mean, it's even tougher, Matt, because they're at the same price point. It's not like you're getting, any discount from one to the other. Ownership is as identical as it comes. Look at the ownership projections across the board. Look at the, optimal captain percentages. Look at optimal, everything here is basically just, if I didn't put names next to these guys and I just showed you this, you'd think it was the same player duped twice in the projections.
Yeah, this is one that's going to be monitored throughout the day. If you start seeing positive leverage on these guys just for ownership reasons, that's where I think we can start getting a little more interesting with them. But in a vacuum, they're too close in price to Mike Evans, to Olave, to Godwin. I'd rather just find the salary and find a way up to the elite receivers.
Anybody else here you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we got everybody.
Yeah. And just for anyone, you and I kind of talked about this throughout the show, but I gave my opinion on it. Let's get yours and then we'll build a lineup before we turn it over to the NBA strategy show. I think both defenses are extremely viable in this game. Neither of them are too overpriced. Saints 4,200, Bucks 4,800. I think both kickers in Suckup and Will Lutz are both very viable in this game. I'm not always all that fond, of defenses in certain spots or kickers in certain spots. Not to say they aren't always viable, but this is one of those games where I could absolutely see a very low scoring, grinded out, crawling affair. Even though Brady throws a lot, we've seen with high passing volume, it hasn't always translated into a lot of points. For a matter of fact, most times it hasn't this season. So yeah, Matt, I'm more than willing to get heavy on defense and kickers if that's how these builds shake out.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side, you've seen Andy Dalton commit a lot of turnovers. So
Yep.
I think both are viable here.
Hey, one more thing. If Prize Picks isn't available to you guys, we just brought it back because the World Cup MGM promo is over. If you didn't take advantage of that and you still want to get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, 2. That's what, $240 value. All you have to do is use the link in the description. Sign up. Mike, throw it in the chat as well. Sign up at BetMGM. Use the link. Put $10 or more if you'd like. Like if you got more money to spare, $10 on any bet that you want. Once that bet settles, you are getting 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Massive value. All of our tools for all of our sports just by signing up and putting $10 on a bet at MGM. I will say though, if you have additional funds that you would like to take advantage of, along with the 2 free months at BetMGM, Matt, this is also a risk-free bet up to $1,000. So if you have a little bit extra, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone there, and you're getting $1,000 up to $1,000 risk-free bet. Pretty amazing deal.
Yeah, I mean, these deals are ridiculous, and they're not going to last forever. So the thing is, don't wait. Don't wait and just assume you're going to get these later. Take advantage of them now. They won't be around forever.
No, 2 free months, everything on our site, all of our tools, including the lineup generator, plus the up to $1,000. If it's $100 you put in, it's still $100 risk-free bet. Links in the got to use the link though, otherwise we can't identify. You can't be emailing us like, "Hey, where's my 2 free months?" Got it. You have to use the link so we can see who you are. All right, let's quickly build a lineup here. We'll start at captain. I'll kick this one off today, Matt. I'm going to go Chris Godwin at captain. I like him there a lot. I know he's popular, but I think Chris Godwin captain is nice.
Perfect. Let's stack him with Brady.
All right. I'm going to go Bucs defense.
Ooh, good one. So that leaves us a pretty good amount of salary. I think I'm still going to take Shaheed as the value play and see if we can't jam in studs now.
Okay. We got Shaheed at value. This is a spot where I think I just have to go to Alvin Kamara and hope that the workload improves.
Yeah, fully down with that.
You got 7,500. So pretty much not whatever you want, but a lot of options here.
And a lot of these guys are backup quarterbacks. I'm going to play Julio Jones. It's going to leave us 21 on the table for salary. Assuming this is a semi-large field. We now have Brady double stack too, which I really like.
Love it. I don't necessarily see this game going in the direction that we're building, but it doesn't matter because you have to build lineups in with a lot of different possibilities. But this one definitely plays to, hey, the Bucs come out and they have themselves a game, and the Saints are in catch-up mode, but Tampa Bay defense stands up as well. Appreciate you guys hanging out as always. NBA strategy show with Josh and Adam coming up next. Hit that thumbs up before you go. If you're watching after the fact, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski, me at Laffy_D, and we'll catch you back here for Thursday Night Football. Peace.